Well, this is another Confessions podcast from BBC Radio 2, where we have the most sinful listeners of all time. What extraordinary stories you do keep sending. We're shocked on a daily basis. This week, a cheeky childminder, some surreptitious supermarket subterfuge, a rogue runner, and a truly hellish Halloween horror. This is a seasonal one, which I think you might like. This is from Mary. Just adding that. Dear Simon and the All Hallowed Collective, with both my boys, aged 5 and 7, already becoming excited about Halloween, my husband and I were discussing our memories of this seasonal festival. I was picturing the early 80s, where the order of the day was the carved swede, because pumpkin had yet to reach our shops in our neck of the woods. Who can forget the aroma of singed swede which flooded the house every week? The height of costume sophistication was an old white sheet with eye holes cut in it. Trick or treat was just for Americans, or just occasionally the local hooligans. I have to admit that back then I was what can only be described as a goody-goody two-shoes. I was the oldest child knocking about our neighbourhood, and it was clear that I was relied upon by local parents to keep an eye on the gaggle of younger children, to sort out disagreements, and to be the sensible one, a role for which I have to admit I was ideally suited. It was for this reason that I was approached by one of the children's mums, who happened to be the wife of a government official, to become the family's babysitter. Well, very excited at the prospect of earning some money, I readily agreed. The reality was I was paid the measly sum of 50p an hour, which is well below minimum wage, which didn't actually exist at the time. Anyway, no matter how long or how late I had to stay, it was always 50p an hour. It was never increased, and this was to babysit the horrific Gregory, who, putting it mildly, was an obnoxious brat. I should have been more savvy, because as soon as he made an appearance to play outdoors and play indoors, there was a collective groan from the other children. He would proceed to boss them around and have a tantrum every 5 minutes, generally spoiling everybody's fun. He was an only child to older parents, and they had chosen to spoil and pander him. He was babysitting hell. Gregory never wanted to go to bed and had an endless list of requirements before settling down. 5 glasses of water, curtains closed just so, songs, 7 in all, temperature just so, and 100 stories. I might be exaggerating here, but you get the idea. He was a nightmare. And talking of nightmares, after a year or so of babysitting Gregory, I had grown to dread the phone call asking me to babysit for him. One day in October, he turned up at our door wanting to play outside, which was fine. I'd get some money, but this would mean me keeping an eye on him and my younger brother. Well, it just so happened that my brother and I loved to drink lime cordial, and back in the 80s it was a particularly virulent green colour. This particular drink must have been new to Gregory. Cool as a cucumber and deadpan, I announced that it was snake's blood, and that we regularly drank it before Halloween to prepare ourselves for the 31st. Quick on the uptake, my brother chipped in with a very realistic hiss. I explained that we had to harvest the blood of 100 snakes to produce enough blood for 1 glass. The black mamba, I said, warming to my theme, and the boa constrictor were tricky and never produced much blood, but the adder and the snake were full of lovely green goodness. And, I added, we had a snake pit out the back and a juicer as well. Would he like to see it? I'm acting now. You drink snake blood, he stammered. Well, only in October. Occasionally bats if there's a snake shortage, but that's a bit more orange juicy, I explained. Anyway, I have to tell you, Gregory went as white as a sheet, if you'll excuse the pun, turned on his heel and headed off for home. I only babysat a couple more times when I learnt that Gregory wouldn't drink any squash, no matter what colour it was, and hated walks in the long grass. Shortly afterwards, the family moved away due to a promotion, so I never got to see him grow up, but I imagine he's a great hedge fund manager somewhere. Yeah. Do you think? Anyway, collective's forgiveness, please. Not for me, as I feel I got my own back for the 50p an hour slavery, but for my brother, who really was an innocent bystander, with an exceptional... And then it goes blank, so I don't know what he's got He might have an exceptional health record, or track record, or... I don't know. There's something about him which is exceptional. Anyway, it runs off the page. Anyway, Halloween stories, of course, we do get them every now and again. Halloween, usually at Halloween, actually. And we'll take as many Halloween confessions as we can fit in this week, if they fit up to our normal standard. But what do you think about this snake's blood instead of lime juice?
She found Gregory annoying, but she could have actually said, I don't want to babysit for him anymore, to the parents. So it's
needed the money.
She needed the money, that's true. But if it was that much of a nightmare, she could have tried to make money in a different way.
It's her own fault.
Also, how old was Gregory? How gullible was he?
Well, I don't know. I don't think
if he was sort of over 7 years old, I think that he would have been very, very gullible, maybe over 5 even, believing that this stuff was snake's blood. So I think, she was just having a laugh, wasn't she? She was just playing around and having a big joke on him, and he was gullible to believe it. So I forgive Mary, and I don't forgive Gregory for being annoying.
What do you think about this then, Sister Bobbery from the Priory?
I imagine I'm going to forgive her. Because the other thing that she did, by telling this story and him being frightened of it and never drinking orange juice or cordials again, she saved him from the teeth-rotting, sugar-loaded syrups, didn't she? So it's a kind of double whammy. She did, again, that Gregory said, I'm not happy about being babysat. She lost the money as well. So she did lose. She lost out on the money, didn't she? Less babysitting, and she saved his teeth. So doubly forgiven.
Okay, well, harvesting the blood of 100 snakes. What say you, Brother Matthew?
The only thing I've written down here is 3 words, and it's other people's kids.
Oh, well, we've talked about that.
Cannot be doing with other people's kids. They're not as talented or as amazing as you think they are, and also if they're badly behaved, I hate them even more. So I am absolutely in Mary's corner here. I'd have gone further with the snakes, but I am, yes, going to forgive.
Does your son ever sort of have friends round?
Never any other kids coming through my door. Particularly, by the way, if you're coming to my house during Halloween, best pack some manners along with your ghost outfit, because nobody, unless they're going to please or thank you, is getting their hands on the bonbons.
All right, well, have you got it all packed and ready?
Yes, it's ready to go, but I am ready. I'm going to be the first at that door if I don't get a please or thank you.
What do you say to them, or what do you do?
I say, what are you here for? And they say, well, we'd like some sweets. And I say, really? Please? Yes, there you go. There's your sweets. And what do you say? Thank you.
A little bit
Good.
scary.
You won't be coming back again, will you? No, I don't think so.
Do you offer the usual stale sweet selection from Christmas last year? That's what normally happens. Sister Brecker, Brother Matthew, and the Dean of Deadliness making a welcome, if rare, appearance.
You're very kind.
Thank you very much. Tonight's tale comes from the Tea Bandit. It's actually how he signed it. He signed it the Tea Bandit. Thank you very much indeed. Dear Father Simon and the purveyors of judgment, the following confession may be unique, as rather than its admission being prompted by another soul wishing to be cleansed, the very act has been influenced by something heard in the confession slot on this very show. Yes, I am confessing because a previous sinner has inspired me to be sinful rather than to repent.
We didn't mean that, did we? That's not the way it's meant to work.
As a parent of 2 young children, the weekly shopping trip to one of the big 4 supermarkets is an adventure of a proportion many childless folk would find surprising. Much of my time is spent herding children down temptation-laden aisles, fishing random sugar-filled items out of the trolley that miraculously have appeared, and other such nonsense. Trying to explain to an irate lady that it was the small child who looks as if butter wouldn't melt in his mouth that had pinched her bottom, and not me, is a particularly vivid memory still. The only slight concession to this hazard-strewn activity is the provision of a few parking spaces designated for parents and children. The extra wide chevron zone between these slots make a lot of difference when wrestling a raging toddler into a car seat, and have doubtless saved the paintwork of many innocent shoppers, as children have a tendency to exit cars with not a care in the world. On the day in question, the trip around the store had been negotiated with reasonable success. I was yet to know of some of my daughter's smuggled booty, and no bottoms had been unduly harassed. On completion of loading the car, a small military operation involving counting shoes and socks back in, I returned the trolley and walked back to the car. As usual for the time of day, the parent and child and disabled spaces were typically busy. A car containing anxious parents with children ready to do their mischief was slowly lapping, and I indicated my intent to return to the sanctuary of home. Nods were exchanged, and all was good. Now, Father Simon, it would be a rather dull story if it ended there, and ashamedly it does not. Now, the design of the car park means that the one-way system takes a long and convoluted route to the exit and passes the disabled and parent and child spaces once more as it goes through the main car park. The numerous empty spaces meant that I could see across into the parent and child spaces as I drove. I could also watch a bright red, shiny sports car, one of the ones made in Italy, screech around the corner before carefully reverse parking in another recently exited parent and child space. Indeed, so good was my visibility due to the gaps in the main car park that I could watch the middle-aged man and his lady friend jump out of the car and chat happily as they made their way into the store, pausing only to lock the car and admire the car and the parking. "Haven't we done well?" they were saying to each other. While stopping our car in one of the child-unfriendly spaces opposite, I turned to my 4-year-old daughter. Lying through my teeth, "You'll like this one, man," I explained that the silly man had obviously forgotten to take his children out of his 2-seater car, and I'd better go and check that they were okay. Guessing that the owner of the sports car was keen to take advantage of the chevron partitioning offered by the parent and child spaces, I decided I would move one of the nearby discarded trolleys and place it so that it was an inch from his driver's door. Oh, no. No harm would be done, apart from a quickening of his heart as he returned to the car park. Hopefully he'd get the message that this was not a specially sanctioned supercar section of the car park. Sadly, Father Simon, I was not satisfied with this gesture. As a community-minded fellow, I thought a little tidying of the supermarket was a selfless action, and so another discarded trolley found itself rehomed on the passenger side. Surely that trolley in the middle of the disabled space had to be moved too? Yes, for parity and fairness, it was also a good idea to move the carelessly parked one left by the hedge. All told, I believe that a number of repositioned trolleys hit double figures by the time I'd finally reached a level of satisfaction. Yes. It's not finished. I was very careful, however. None of the trolleys were touching the car, and to make sure that they did not roll around, I was thoughtful enough to use the child lap belts on each of them, you know, the ones that it's nearly impossible to undo once done up, to connect all the trolleys in a perfect circle. If a job is worth doing, it's worth doing properly. So, Father Simon and the Collective, I do not seek forgiveness from the driver of the red sports car from Italy. He was undoubtedly delighted to see that someone had checked that he'd left no children behind and built a safety cell around his car to make sure it didn't get scratched. I do, however, seek forgiveness from the car park staff, who no doubt would have experienced many sprained fingers on the buckles of the trolleys as they returned them to the massed ranks awaiting use. Also from the next parent who had to wait slightly longer for the space to become free, and probably endured a shopping trip from hell due to my actions. Forgiveness, please, says the Tea Bandit. Very novel, and obviously a lot of people get cross when people park incorrectly, particularly if the person that's done the parking is a show-off in an Italian sports car with no children. I mean, really? What is going on? Almost anything would probably be justifiable. Let's see what careful driver and careful mother makes of this.
Rebecca.
Yes, I know that. I'm just. I know you're Rebecca, but careful mother.
And you are
careful driver.
Yeah, well, I do get very angry when I see people parking in those child spaces, and when I can't get a place as a result. So I think he was absolutely justified. I think it's hilarious. He told his kids he was going to check to see whether the children were in the car, and what did they think he was doing? Lassoing, tying all these trolleys round that red sports car.
Idea.
I think it's a great idea, and I completely support him. And I just hope that the driver came back and found the trolleys there, and that the supermarket staff didn't move them first, because I hope the driver learned his lesson and realised that it's just not on to do that.
And it would have drawn attention to the fact that he was driving because he'd probably asked for help, and then everyone went, "Here, mate, you're in the wrong."
That's also true.
Space.
So yeah, you're completely forgiven.
Yes.
Dean of Deadliness.
Me too, forgiven, absolutely. No harm done. The car wasn't damaged, because I thought you were going to go on to say they actually collided with the vehicle, but they didn't, those trolleys, did they? So it was very cleverly...
in such a newsreader's way, wasn't it? They collided with the vehicle.
Collided with the vehicle.
They're not even moving, but they still collided with it.
Well, they might move, you know, these things do, don't they? Even though they've got brakes on and all that.
It's almost like breaking news when you say it.
Is it the headlines? The headlines this lunchtime. I thought it was quite funny, a very clever way of dealing with the situation.
Thank you very much. Forgiven. His brother Matthew, he's going to forgive.
Yes, we're obviously going to forgive. None of us like this bloke in his red sports car. I have zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. Here's the thing, right? It's for parents with children. It is not for I've got a big car, I've got a big people carrier, I need to be able to park in a bigger space. No, it's not. And here's the other thing, is if you are driving a big car and you decide to park there, I will say something. I will come over to you and demand to see your children in a nice way. So I am definitely going to forgive for that reason alone. Get out of that parking space just because you've got a big car. And anyway, if you're driving, we all hate you anyway in your big car. So, yes, definitely forgive me.
When you said I've got a big people carrier, a number of people raised their eyebrows, I have to tell you.
Really?
Right, tonight's confession comes from Alf Tupper. Thank you, Alf. A well-known character, if you read the comic. Dear Father Simon, in the Association of Athletic Absolution, this week saw the now familiar package arrive from the organisers of the London Marathon telling me that I was unsuccessful in the public ballot again. This disappointment did bring memories flooding back of my heinous act when I ran the London Marathon a few years ago. I recently had a sad loss in the family and I was running on behalf of a charity to raise money for them and pay back some of their kindness. A few weeks before the race, the charity sent out a pack, including some very smart running vests and some of those iron-on stencils that us runners could use to put our names on the vest so that the spectators could call out our names to cheer us on. That was all well and good, but I had an idea to make the day a little bit more fun. And instead of ironing on my own name, I decided to iron on a more imaginative epithet that would give people a smile.
Mr. Pricklepants.
It would have been good, wouldn't it? I thought I would avoid anything too rude, and in the end went for the simple lazy git, which is what I put on my vest. Well, on the day of the marathon, Simon, things went absolutely according to plan, and within a few hundred yards of passing the start line, I clearly heard the first call of, "Come on, lazy git! Come on!" I looked around to see the person in the crowd, and we exchanged a knowing smile, a cheery wave, and I ran on. This was repeated a few hundred yards further on, and then again and again and again. It was all going perfectly according to plan. That, though, is the end of the good bit. This is when everything started to take a funny turn. You see, Father Simon, every now and again I heard the call of, "Come on, lazy git!" And I would look up, wave and smile at the person shouting and run on. But I became aware in the crowd behind me of arguments that would start up that basically went along the lines of, "Oi, mate, keep your mouth shut. Don't say things like that. They're running for charity." "But that's what he had written on his vest." "Get out of it. You can't say that." "Shut it."
Oh, right. We're back in that land, are we?
Well...
shut it.
Shut it.
Was it the South London Marathon, was it?
We're in the Ray Winston Marathon, aren't we? Yeah.
It is the London Marathon. Obviously, if this was the Rio Marathon,
then you wouldn't be
I
saying
would
like
do
that.
a little bit of...
No. Okay.
But it's the London Marathon, so I think they're just going through the East End
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, that sort of thing, says Alf. Unfortunately, as I was running, I didn't stop to try and help my erstwhile supporters, but simply ran off into the distance, leaving them to their arguments. And they're shouting at each other, and they're pushing and they're shoving, and by the sound of it, fisticuffs. I have no idea how the arguments developed. They were all behind me, but some sounded quite heated. The decent thing would have been to stop and say hello and explain, so naturally I kept running. And so it went on for mile after mile after mile. It got so bad that at one point one of the runners near me stopped and decided to have a go at these rude people calling out "lazy git" all the time. But I did manage to grab her and keep her running by explaining to her what was happening and pointing to my shirt. So here we go then. I need forgiveness from all the runners around me who were bombarded for the duration of the London Marathon by calls of "Come on, lazy git." I beg forgiveness of Denise Lewis specifically.
Brilliant.
Whom I passed on Tower Bridge. We made eye contact, and then she saw what was written on my shirt, and she waved me on. Don't want to hang around with him. But most of all, I beg forgiveness from the fantastic spectators who came out on that spring day, cheered and applauded, and called out support, but who, simply because they spotted me and called out my vest name, became involved in a varying degree of unpleasantness and ended the day with cuts and bruises and possibly a police caution, having got into a fight with other spectators, or so I am led to believe. In my defence, I completed the marathon in just over 4 hours and raised almost £3,000 for the Motor Neurone Disease Association. Can I be forgiven, please, says Alf Tupper, Tupper of the Track. That's who this is. It's an interesting idea. I hadn't heard of this, but I wonder if a number of people use those letters and just change their name into something extraordinary. Sister Rebecca.
It's a funny idea, isn't it? I mean, he's definitely got a sense of humour, but obviously he didn't realise what a problem it was going to cause with the spectators. I think probably after I'd heard a few fights starting behind me, I probably would have taken it off and turned it inside out or something, or rearranged the letters.
Can I just say, I don't think you would.
You don't think... What, me?
I don't think if you were running, you'd have taken off your running vest.
Well, I don't think he was going that fast. It doesn't sound like he was kind of in the lead and it would have slowed him down.
That's not the concern. I think if you were running, you wouldn't take off your running vest, Rebecca.
I might have something underneath, for goodness sake. Anyway.
Look at her, she's a show-off, isn't she?
Oh dear. I think because it was meant in a funny way, though. I'm going to forgive.
She's just drawing attention to herself. Sister Bobby, from the Priory.
I don't know if I could follow that, really.
No.
Actually, I think it's great fun. And everyone would have laughed. Everyone, just because I know. You're not really interested now. As I say, it's generally, you're not responsible for everyone else's behaviour. No, the thing is I'm just worried. You are absolutely forgiven for having just a sense of fun. You're the one that's running the marathon. You're giving something funny for people to go, did they really say that? Yep. The only thing... Go on.
No.
Okay, yeah, forgiven.
Very good. What do you say, brother Matt?
I love the name. See, when we watched the London Marathon, I was watching it with my wife, and there was a bloke next to her who kept shouting, "Come on, Brian! Come on, Bob! Come on, Barry!" And my wife said, "Wow, he knows loads of people, doesn't he?" I said, "No, that's the names on the shirt." So definitely forgiven. And anything that involves, I'd like to seek the forgiveness of Denise Lewis. Brilliant.
So, this is our last confession before Halloween. Okay? Because unless I'm sort of tempted maybe to do a Halloween confession tomorrow, but we're in the middle of your request, it just will, won't feel right somehow. So let's bring you this one from Mr. Supply Teacher, who sends in tonight's Halloween-themed confession. Dear Monsignor Mayo and the Contemplative Collective, this is not my first confession. You may recall a séance of the high school elite that was rudely interrupted by the knocking of a window pole from below. Anyway, but such is my dark and devious past. I have more than one misdemeanour to my name. The year is 2001. My future wife and I had recently been the first of our group of friends to buy a family home by purchasing a nondescript 3-bedroom house that hadn't been decorated since the 1970s. One particularly memorable room had nicotine-yellowed floral wallpaper on the walls and ceiling and matching curtains. Hideous, huh? This was not a room to pass out in any sense of, because all orientation was difficult when you were lying on the floor. Which is an interesting perspective to have on a strangely wallpaper, but it is relevant, but that's his perspective on this particular room. The rest of the house was in a similar state, and as such, we decided a massive moving-in party could inflict no real damage to the decor. It looked terrible. Let's have a party. Mm-hmm. We decided to time the party with the weekend before Halloween and give it a theme. Rocky Horror was our choice. As most of us had yet to have kids, everyone we invited turned up. See, there you go.
Oh, those are the days.
Yes, there you go. Gamely dressed in suspenders, corsets and makeup. Oh, those were the days. Oh, just me.
Moving on. Dear me. Matt, come back. Order.
It's come to a pretty pass when it's Nigel that's the one that's holding us back.
It's a Rocky Horror Show party,
It
right?
is. So it's Rocky Horror. So what else are you going to wear?
Exactly.
You got to go dressed as Nicholas Parsons. That's the way it is. Anyway, having not seen each other for a while, the party quickly picked up pace, which could mean anything. I suspect some guests may have started refreshing themselves prior to arriving, as by 10 o'clock the night had claimed its first victim. By the way, that's now called preloading. You might like to know.
With pumpkin ale on this occasion.
Yeah, that's right. Or apparently now just prees. You go around, if you're a teenager or a youngster anyway, coming around to our place for prees. I mean, that's what it is. Anyway, by 10 o'clock the night had claimed its first victim. We'll call him John. And he had, shall we say, gone for a sleep in the aforementioned floral room with nicotine stains everywhere. This provided a great source of entertainment as people added to his makeup as he lay there in a fetching pink basque. Nice. Well, it's Rocky Horror. See the movie for details. Soon after this, the doorbell rang. The house was pretty packed, so the hallway, like the rooms, was filled with people in fancy dress. This meant that as I opened the door, behind me stood a wall of men in Rocky Horror attire. On the doorstep stood 3 teenage boys, of an age where they should probably have stopped trick-or-treating. 2 were wearing normal clothes and a feeble mask, and the third looked like he could do with a shave. I still remember the face of the youth as he was confronted by a house filled with grown men in drag. And the way the words... trick or treat...
Help, mummy.
tailed off from their mouths. At this point, John stumbled out of the floral room, having come to and wondered what all the fuss was about in the hall. Looking like a crazed clown and adjusting his pink balloon cleavage, this was the final straw for the young men who ran off into the dark, screaming and howling the occasional word of abuse not fit for broadcast. This, however, is not the end of the story. On Halloween itself, the same youths bravely turned up trick-or-treating again. "Hello, boys," I said, in a way not too dissimilar to that of a David Walliams character. Now, how should I do that? "Hello, boys." Would that be right?
Yeah.
No, how would you say
Depends
that?
on which character.
That's true. Matt,
Is it
how
the
would you do?
ladies?
Yes,
Yeah,
I would
ladies.
imagine it would be more of that. You know.
Hello, boys.
Hello.
That's
Okay,
it,
fine,
Matt,
I'll
you're
do
good
that.
at
Okay. "Hello, boys," I said, in a way not too dissimilar to that of a David Walliams character. Aren't you the ones who came round the other night when me and my friends were having a party? Well, all of them strenuously denied it was them, but were happy to leave empty-handed after I said I had a cocktail sausage or two left over from the weekend. I don't ask...
No, move on. Please. Now.
What?
Good. It would be good if you moved on now.
I don't ask forgiveness from the boys, who hopefully are well-adjusted 20-somethings by now. But from the neighbours, who no doubt endured the din of the party until midnight, though it was the Saturday the clocks went back, and possibly reduced property prices as a result of the rumours of weird goings-on in the neighbourhood. I also asked forgiveness of John, who is now a respected GP, aware that somewhere the photos still exist. Kind regards, Mr. Supply Teacher. I do like the idea of the trick-or-treaters coming around. Door opens, room full of men in Rocky Horror attire. Chances are they're not going to know about Rocky Horror, and they're going to go, "OK, sorry we knocked, we'll be on our way then." But they still came back for more. Anyway, Sister Rebecca.
He doesn't want their forgiveness, right? It's just the neighbours' forgiveness he wants for
Yeah,
the
he's
party.
not interested in them. It's the
Yeah.
neighbours because they went on and they were making a big riot.
Yeah. Well, you know, you've got to have a Rocky Horror party in your 20s. I presume they're in their 20s
Something
when
like
you're
that,
young. So, yeah, I mean, I think everyone's allowed to, and they may have disturbed the neighbours, but it was a Saturday night, and it didn't say it went on all night or anything. So I think you're forgiven.
OK, well, that's very nice. Supply Teacher's going well. The Novice, what are you saying?
Yeah, I think the supply teacher, that's my kind of supply teacher, and well done. And those three who came back were probably all MPs, well adjusted and quite normal. So forgiven.
You've acquitted yourself quite well.
Thank you.
I would say, without any rudeness. Let's see what Brother Matthew comes up with.
My only problem here is, why are they coming round twice? I thought the whole idea is that you come round once, you do the trick-or-treat thing, you get your sweets, and then you leave and don't come back for another year. I don't get that. I'm not a big fan of this, we'll go round again and knock on these doors again and get some more sweets. So I am going to forgive, just because those boys shouldn't have been coming round for a second time.
They liked what they saw, Matt.
Okay.
And I would think if you lived near Matt, he would be delighted to welcome all trick-or-treaters, probably from now on.
Big fan of that. Better make sure it's before I get home.
Have you got something sort of ready?
Yeah,
ready
we've got sweets, and as I said before, they better be packing some manners if they knock on my door.
Well, they were this week's confessions. Thank you very much indeed for staying to the end of this podcast. If it has provoked a thought in your mind as to something bad that you've done and you'd like to share with us, on an email, please, confessions@bbc.co.uk, or you can go via the Radio 2 website. Thank you. And don't forget the Weekly Mayo, available this and every Friday.